Yeah, you ever just have one of those days where you like sitting around the office and you just don't get anything done for like easily at least an hour? And the only thing you can think about is like back home, your sofa or your bed? That's me today. So, I guess cruise news? Hey, welcome to the Midships channel. I'm Corey, and today I'm going to serve up another sweet slice of cruise news. Honestly, if cruise news were pizza, today it might even be a Hawaiian one. And I know that's going to be a little controversial because does pineapple actually belong on pizza? Comment below. Let me know. I'm a little curious now. Okay, now that I stirred up that hornet's nest, let's see what we have for cruise news today. Carnival Cruise Line, well, they're changing itinerary for 3 popular ships. I'll let you know which ones. Norwegian Cruise Line, well, they're dominating the cruise news today as they're set to not only cancel cruises, but increase gratuities on ones that are operating. And that's not all, because one of their ships, the Norwegian Sky, is making a little news of her own today. Plus, Royal Caribbean and Celebrity Cruises, the final 2 big holdouts to cancel cruising in Russia, well, they finally caved to the pressure coming down on them from social media. And the second ship for Virgin Voyages, the Valiant Lady, made her inaugural call into Portsmouth today, just 16 days ahead of her inaugural sailing. But we're going to start today with a story coming out of Key West, Florida, as the Carnival Conquest became the first ship for the cruise line to dock in Key West in over 2 years. And if any of you know what's going on down in Key West, well, they're probably not all that happy about it. So for a quick refresher, the folks down in the Florida Keys voted to pass a bill that would prohibit large vessels carrying over 1,300 passengers to dock in Key West. Basically, they wanted to help the environment there. They say that these large cruise ships stir up silt that's hurting the bottom of the ocean surrounding Key West. Well, following the successful passage of this law, the state government of Florida stepped in and overturned the legislation, saying that the state has the ultimate say in what can go on in Florida's ports. So as you can imagine, it's a hot button issue down there in the Florida Keys to this day. Whenever a large cruise ship comes into port, they're often met with some local protest resistance types who hold signs up and chant, and overall it's pretty much just a nothing burger. However, it'd be a little bit weird getting off a cruise ship and being protested against, if you ask me. However, the protesters do seem to make the claim that they're not protesting the cruisers themselves, but the cruise ships and the cruise operators. But whether this is true or not, it ends up being a pretty lukewarm welcome for cruisers to Key West at the moment. So I would argue, despite their claims, they're essentially protesting cruisers, which is exactly why I plan on avoiding Key West altogether for the time being. If they don't want cruisers there, I'm not going to upset their apple cart. And speaking of upsetting the apple cart, Royal Caribbean, they've really done just that on social media over the last few days by being very slow to remove cruise calls into Russian ports. So much so that they even found themselves the target of a hit piece from Cruise Law News and many other folks on Twitter. So we're going to discuss the fallout of all this right after I remind you that I'm hosting a group cruise October 24th on the Carnival Sunshine, sailing out of Charleston, South Carolina. If you'd like to get more information on how you can cruise with me for 5 days down to the Caribbean, all you have to do is follow the link to the group's Facebook page in the description below this video. While you're down there, I do want to call your attention to the link to some of the best looking cruise merch, quite frankly, around in the Midships merch store. But you do have to be careful with that stuff, because I can guarantee if anybody sees you on a cruise with some of that merch on, they're going to be pretty jealous, and they're probably going to spend at least a few conversations finding out how they can get some of it for themselves. Cool beans, thanks for sticking it out while I pay some of those bills. Now, let's talk about all of this business going on with Royal Caribbean, aka Celebrity Cruise Line as well, finally pulling their cruise calls from St. Petersburg, Russia. Over the past few days or so, literally every cruise line has come out and said, yeah, we're not going to go ahead and bother with cruising to Russia in light of the current situation. Around the world, you have governments banning Russian flights, Russian vodka, all sorts of Russian exports, what have you. Sanctions are being put in place to single out Russia for this horrendous action that they're currently undertaking. However, social media has not been happy with the Royal Caribbean group initially taking the stance that, yeah, we're still going to try to cruise into St. Petersburg. And to be quite honest, St. Petersburg is one of the people's favorite port of calls in this region, so I can't entirely blame a corporation for wanting to include one of their most popular ports of calls on their itineraries. However, in light of the current situation, and it's important a company learns how to read the room, well, Royal Caribbean doesn't seem like they read the room correctly on this one, but it seems like they finally did catch up, and they're finally saying the safety of our guests and crew is our top priority. We will continue to monitor the events taking place around the world, including this situation in Ukraine. And I'm kind of surprised they just called it a situation. It's pretty light language, to be honest. With recent events, Royal Caribbean has made the decision to cancel our visits to St. Petersburg on all summer 2022 itineraries. We have planned alternative ports and will continue to communicate itinerary changes to our guests. So it appears that Royal Caribbean may have seen the light. They're going to go ahead and pull St. Petersburg off of their cruises for the time being. Good job, Royal Caribbean. So I'm sure all of you have been to the gas pump or the grocery store lately and noticed that, well, pretty much everything across the board, it's either getting more expensive or your money, it's just not buying as much as it used to. And it seems like that's happening with Norwegian Cruise Line as well, because they just announced that they're going to begin increasing their automatic gratuities beginning April 1st. So this will be the first time in about 2 years now that the cruise line has increased gratuities. For the most part, gratuities are going to be going up by 50 cents all the way to $1.50 a day, depending on which type of cabin you're staying in. So if you're booked in like a balcony or lower, gratuities going forward, starting in April, will be $16 per person per day, anyone over 3 years old. And that's up from the $15.50 a day as it currently stands. However, if you're staying in a higher grade cabin, gratuities could go up as high as $20 a day if you're staying in the Haven or Suite category. Norwegian is pinning the rate hike on the industry-wide shutdown, saying that many of their employees waited for up to 2 years with no income before coming back to work on the ship. And that's not the only news Norwegian is making today, because one of their ships, the Norwegian Sky, it's officially resuming operations out of Miami, Florida for the first time in nearly 2 years. So that's some great news for those of you cruising on Norwegian. The 1999 built Norwegian Sky will sail a Western Caribbean itinerary and over to the Bahamas, setting her course towards Key West, Cozumel, and Great Stirrup Cay. And I wish I could tell you we're done talking about Norwegian, but we're not, because one of their coolest ships, the Epic, they've just canceled a ton of cruises for it. So let me give you the details. This is more for our European cruisers. However, a lot of you do love your Norwegian here at the channel, so I definitely need to give you this info. So here's what's happening. Norwegian Cruise Line has reached out to their guests booked on board the Epic for cruises out of Barcelona in 2023. And they basically said there's no longer going to be cruises on Epic from Barcelona for 2023. And this is something that cruise lines do from time to time. They need to reevaluate whether or not these itineraries are going to be profitable or popular, or there's even enough bookings to support the itinerary. And maybe the Epic could just make them a lot more money in some other market, which is what's going to happen. Now, with that said, we still don't know where Norwegian is going to be sending the Epic. She could be coming over here to the US. She could head up towards the UK. Your guess, it's as good as mine. And speaking of itinerary changes, Carnival, they've got 3 additional ones to announce today for ships, including the Horizon, the Pride, and the Glory. I'll quickly run through these because they're a little bit more specific to cruises. Carnival Glory, based out of New Orleans, is having an 8-day Western Caribbean voyage on March 5th that will no longer be going to Grand Cayman. Carnival Pride's March 13th 7-day departure is also being changed. The cruise ship, it's also not going to Grand Cayman. And Carnival Horizon's March 13th departure out of Miami, which is a 6-night cruise, well, guess what? It's also not going to Grand Cayman. So for those of you paying attention, you probably noticed a pattern. And that pattern, it appears to be Grand Cayman, who's not being the most friendly to cruise ships right now, because of a requirement that currently states cruise ships are only able to sail there at 40% capacity. And as you well know, most cruise ships, at least Carnivals, they're sailing at well over 40% capacity into the 60, 70, maybe even 80% range at this point. So only time will tell if Grand Cayman decides to change their ways and join the rest of the world in having reasonable, science-backed protocols for cruising. Hey, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Canada, we're looking at you guys too. Don't think I forgot about all your crazy protocols. Okay, before I get myself in trouble with this big mouth of mine, we're going to talk about Virgin Voyages. They finally have a second cruise ship. She's named the Valiant Lady. She's due to start operations for the first time ever from Portsmouth on March 18th. Well, she finally arrived there for the very first time, and why don't you just take a look at her for yourself? These photos come from a Twitter user named Andrew Mickelpeen. He goes by the handle Cruise Ship P on there, and he says, "Welcome, beautiful lady, Virgin Voyages, Valiant Lady, entering Portsmouth Harbor on her inaugural visit this morning." And wow, these are some beautiful pictures. That battleship gray on these Virgin ships, it's really growing on me. I absolutely hated it when I first saw it, but man, it looks really good under certain conditions. And it seems like the foggy conditions over in England, well, they suit it pretty well. Nice work, Richard Branson. And speaking of social media, don't forget, I'm on Instagram at Midships Cruise. If you want to see behind the scenes at all of my cruises and some other things going on here at the studio, all you have to do is take a quick look at Midships Cruise on Instagram. Here's a link. I'll post it for you. It's a little easier that way. If you made it this far into today's episode, why haven't you subscribed to the channel yet? I put out new cruise content every single day that you need to know about if you're a cruiser. Thanks for stopping by the channel today, and until tomorrow, we'll see ya on the Midships.